Hey, Casey, welcome to the Soul Line Self Care Podcast. I'm very excited to get to talk to you today. How are you doing?
I'm great, Tina. Thank you for having me. I so genuinely appreciate being here with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation. So, to get started, to share with the audience, who you are, what you do, and let's just get started with that.
Yeah, so I am a three-time cancer survivor who had a stroke in during my treatment, and now I am a cancer coach to help women physically, mentally, emotionally recover from cancer.
Wow, three times. That's difficult. So, when did your journey start?
I was 31 when I was diagnosed, and it was everything changed in a instant. Like I was at work that Friday morning that I was diagnosed, thinking I was going to the doctor during my quote unquote lunch break, and then I'd be back at work. And I didn't go back to work for months.
Wow.
I was immediately hospitalized. They were like, "How are you even like walking around and like functioning?"
Wow. Oh my God. That must have been such a shock to your system, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I knew something was going on, but I never ever thought it was something that serious,
Yeah.
ever.
So, do you feel comfortable sharing what type of cancer you had?
Yeah, so I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is typically a children's cancer. So I had uh, the rare opportunity to get it at 31 years old. So there's about 1,000 people globally that get diagnosed within the age range that I was in,
hmm
which, I was at a teaching hospital. So it makes you a little bit of a petri dish for
Yeah,
them.
could see that. Yeah, I could totally see that. So, what were some of the things that you felt off about when you were
Yeah. So
diagnosed?
a, a, a lot of the symptoms I was ignoring, honestly, I thought it was just stress from work and life. It was
hmm
right before the holiday season around Christmas that I started to feel things. Like there's a node in my neck, which I was like, oh my gosh, if I get strep, like I'm gonna feel miserable. Let's nip this in the butt, right?
Yeah.
I was really tired, but I was just like, oh, it's stress. That's why
hmm
I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Um, I was having night sweats and I was just like, oh, maybe my blankets are too hot. Like
hmm
I kept justifying everything that I was feeling. I had low back pain and I was like, well, maybe I did something at the gym, right?
Yeah.
Like I just kept like
I know.
ignoring it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because it's not like it's so serious that you like, oh, I have to go to the doctor. And you could, like you said, justify it with other things, and I
100%.
yeah, I could see that. Yeah, 100%. And I did that before I had my stroke also. Like I justified all these weird symptoms I was having. So I could see that. Um, so I didn't know that you could have a stroke from your treatment. Was it from the treatment or was it just it was? Okay.
Yeah, it was. So I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I mean, they give you a ton of forms to fill out before you start treatment. So it was in the literature, but you're just signing it because you're like,
I have to do
I
this.
don't want to die, right?
Yeah.
Like basically,
Yeah.
right? So you're not really you're looking at it, but you're not looking at it. And
hmm
4 months into my treatment, I had a CF leak, which is I had to have infusions where they took out liquid in between my vertebrae, put chemo in it that went straight to my brain because apparently I had it in my brain and I didn't know that until like after the fact.
hmm
And when they don't equal out the liquid that they take out and the liquid that they put in, it can create these massive headaches. And they call it a CF leak. And it basically is like, it feels like vertigo.
Okay. That's
And
terrible.
oh, it's awful because the minute you pick up your head, you immediately want to like lay it back down.
Yeah.
So that happened 3 days prior. And then I was just severely dehydrated because of that. I was still getting chemo like every day. So it just like my body just didn't have a break to like recover from any of what I was any of the treatment that I was getting. So when I actually went to the doctor and was in the hospital when I had my stroke, and I think this is why I, number one, recovered so well, and number two, why I think my life was saved, because I think if I had it at home, I don't know if I would
Yeah.
have made it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was severely dehydrated, and I was having an allergic reaction to something they gave me. So I was admitted to the hospital that afternoon. So I just happened to be at the right place.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy, isn't it? So many
Yeah.
things going on too at the same time. So, oh my God, that must have been
Yeah.
so scary. So scary.
Oh, it was terrifying. And the thing, like, when I was having it, I didn't know I was having it. My husband at the time goes, smile. And I was like, and I was really annoyed at this point. So I go, I am. And he's like, no, really smile. And I go, I am, like, yelling at him. And he goes, okay. And he just walks out of the room. And I was like, that was weird. No panic on his face, nothing. Meanwhile, he's like yelling in the hallway. Apparently, this is what he told me afterward about it. And
Hmm.
then the last thing I remember is him walking back in the room, sitting down, and that was it. And then I must have blacked out or something, because I woke up
Wow.
and they're putting electrodes on my head.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, what an experience. Wow. So moving from being scared, let's talk about, how you help people as a cancer coach, because I can imagine how valuable that would be to someone going through a situation. I know all situations are different, but just having the knowledge and the experience you have and to be able to comfort a person through that, how does that work?
Yeah, so there are definitely commonalities between the cancers, even though, you know, you could have something completely different than somebody else. The feelings and the symptoms and the recovery is all the same, basic, like, within a certain degree, obviously.
Hmm.
But the feelings and what you're going through mentally and emotionally are the same,
Yeah.
basically. There's a lot of fear, and because there's so much unknown, and there's a lot of anxiety, and you have to change your life so drastically to get through it. And then when you're done, there's very little to no support afterward. And you're like left with, like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm terrified this is going to come back,
Hmm.
but I know I need to, like, change things in my life, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you help people work through that fear at the
So,
beginning? And then I'm assuming, so probably at the beginning, and then also even after recovery of the fear of it coming back.
right. And it's a lot of, it's not just, you know, learning how to manage the thoughts that are in your head. It's so much more, because a lot of the fear and the anxiety is body driven. So it's getting down to regulating our nervous system again. It's why I teach the women that I work with yoga for trauma, and we do somatics together. We do breath work, because we need to get back into the body.
Hmm.
The brain is the one naming all the things that you feel.
Yeah.
So, but our body is actually feeling it before our brain even recognizes it. So it's definitely about, you know, yes, cognitive behavior therapy tools are great, but not for what we as survivors and fighters need to be learning, right?
Hmm.
Like, they can only do so much. You can only think so much, right? Like, but if
Yes.
we're not if we're not getting to the root cause of where it's coming from, we can't heal it, and we can't start to regulate it truly,
Yeah. So
like I
I,
always say, these appointments never go away. You have to learn how to deal with it and manage it and heal it.
yeah, very true. And yeah, I read a book a while back. I like the way you explain the anxiety part of it, because I think it was called Anxiety RX or something like that. I don't know if you've read that. And
Mm-mm.
he talks about how anxiety starts in the body. And it's kind of like this loop where it's in the body and then it moves into your head. And then it's just continuously this loop. And trying to stop the loop is really the key, and paying attention to the body. And so I could see how that could be so powerful, doing all the somatic exercises and learning how to regulate your nervous system and stuff like that. I assume that you do a lot of mindset work. So how much does that figure into the work that you do with these women?
So much,
Yeah.
honestly, like I work with a lot of women who don't prioritize themselves. So it's like shifting the mindset of like putting your oxygen mask on first,
Mm-hmm.
like, so that's like the first step is like, we have to take care of ourselves to take care of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
The, and you are worthy and deserving of care for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then it's like building back up from scratch, right? Like what are the coping mechanisms and the conversations that you've been having in your head that you've been doing for decades that no longer serve you,
Mm-hmm.
that are getting in the way of you living a healthier, happier life, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
That's huge. That's a huge mindset shift, because especially with women, and maybe with men too. But I know with women specifically, because that's what I work with. And we're kind of raised at birth to focus on taking care of everybody else. It's almost like programmed into us. It's like put everybody else first, and we wear that with a badge of honor. We're like, you know, and we talk about people that do this to themselves, like they're, you know, like as a leader, someone to look up to. It's like, oh, she works so hard. She does everything for everybody else. She supports her family. She puts everybody else first before herself. And she's so selfish and selfless. And I'm just like, yeah, but what I always say, and I'm sure you probably would agree with this, but is like when we take care of ourselves first, when we learn how to put ourselves first, we just put a better version of ourselves into the world for everybody else. So everybody really benefits from that. Our children, our partners, our friends, our businesses, our workplace. Like when we put our self-care first, put everything for us so that we could heal and we can rest and we could have fun and expand, and be creative, and we could do all those things first. Then think about how much more powerful it is when you spend time with your children and your partner and your friends, right?
oh, I couldn't agree with you more, Tina. Like,
Yeah.
and we are raised from birth very
Hmm.
differently than how men typically are. And I just remember growing up, like, be the helper, be the good girl, pitch in. Like,
Hmm.
I don't think they said that to my brother at all.
No, no, no. I remember this is something that sticks in my head for some reason. So I have one brother and he's older. And my parents were wonderful. They really were. I had great parents and definitely won the parent lottery, right? But I was raised like this. So it's a generational thing, right? And I lived 2 hours from my family. I had three children, and my brother lived right next door to my parents. And so I came to visit one day. I just drove 2.5 hours with three little kids. I get there, and my brother stops in, and my mom says, "Oh, Wayne, would you like some coffee?" And he was like, "Yeah." And my mom looked at me and said, "Tina, go make your brother some coffee." And
Oh,
I was like, "What?"
wow.
And it wasn't my brother's fault. Like he actually was just like, but that's how my mother was raised, and so that's how she was teaching me. But I like at the time I was like, no. So
The
but
fact
that's
that
like,
you even said that is
yeah.
like,
It's
that's
like,
huge.
I would like some coffee. Wayne, can you make me some coffee? So
Mhm.
so it's funny. So like my mom didn't mean anything bad by it. Like I said, she was a wonderful mom, and obviously my brother didn't do anything wrong. But it was really like this weird like aha moment for me that I was like, okay, yeah. So that's an example. I would say that some people experience, and I would imagine that you probably have to work with people quite a lot, like even as they're going through their treatment with this one mindset.
Oh, yeah. Like they're sacrificing themselves a lot of times and their health as a result of it. And it's like, we have to shift the conversation completely,
Mm-hmm.
right? And having boundaries around your time and your ability to say no to other people is like a huge part of of the learning lesson as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't even know I could say no to things growing up, let
Yeah.
alone in my career. Like I worked in corporate America for 10 years. I never said no to one corporate event outside of our office hours.
Oh my
Never
goodness.
said no. Like 2 days before I was diagnosed, I was at a charity event for my corporate workplace.
Oh my
Like
God.
what?
Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. Moving towards the other mindset of the fear.
Mhm.
Like especially when I talk about after somebody recovers and they're moving into that part. And I've heard this from multiple people. My mom did have cancer, but other than my mom, my experience with my mom, I haven't had like a friend or someone like that with cancer, but I've read things and heard things that like when it's all over with, it feels quite empty. And like all the people that started out being there for you, not intentionally, but no one's like there because they feel like you're recovered and you're better and you don't need anybody. But I feel like almost like that's the time when you need a lot of support because you're trying to transition from this something that's probably occupied a large portion of your life to shift back to like try to normalize that and then get past the fear of worrying about it coming back. So, what is that like to help someone transition into that?
Yeah. I mean, you're taking years most of the
Hmm.
time out of your life to fight cancer and to beat it. And then to lack the support systems. I felt like the medical system lets us all down, right?
Hmm.
You're seeing them at least once a week, every other week, or once a month, right? Like your doctors, nurses, somebody's always there to support you. And they literally go, okay, you're done. And then that's it. Like
Yeah.
you might see them once a year going forward, and like that's it. And you're like, are you
Yeah.
sure you got it all? Is it going to come back? And you're terrified every day.
Hmm.
And so it's changing the conversation to go, okay, I can't guarantee your cancer is going to come back or not. No one can. No. And if
Hmm.
somebody says that, please run the other way.
Yeah.
However, you have control over your what you do physically, mentally, and emotionally to prevent it as much as possible, right? So we can change our lifestyles, eat better, exercise, lower our stress. There are like fundamental things that you can do to increase your odds of survival, right?
Hmm.
So it's then giving someone back the power to go, here are the things that you should be doing, and you have more control. So that combined with like the breath work, the somatics, the yoga for trauma, all of that taking back their power and control creates the perfect, I wouldn't say perfect, but it creates an opportunity
Hmm.
for women, including myself, to see like, okay, even though this is the trajectory and path I was on, I'm on a completely different one, but I get to make a better version, right?
Hmm.
I get to create a 2.0 version of Casey. I get to take the good, but I also get to leave the bad.
Hmm.
So it's like giving someone the power and an ability to dream a different dream.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
And
really combined together creates the opportunity for the women that I work with to move forward and to let go.
yeah, I could see how that could you always feel better when you feel like you have some sort of kind of like control over the outcome. And we do have a lot of control over the outcome. It's not easy to do. Now, I didn't have cancer, but I did have a stroke. And
Yeah.
my specific type of stroke was I had a tear in my artery, right? and
Mm.
my vertebral artery that goes to my brain. And the reason why it wasn't um, the injury wasn't so bad was because you have two vertebral arteries. And so I was lucky enough to instantly have that blood keep going to my brain. But I did have a clot go into my brain. And so the recovery was the reason why I had a stroke was because, there was an injury and then your blood clots up where there's an
Mhm.
injury and then that's when it blocked off. And so the recovery it was too dangerous to do surgery. So basically, they said it takes 8 weeks for an artery to heal. So you have to sit still for 8 weeks. And I was like, what? They were like, you can't do anything. You have to say, set me home in a neck brace. I swear to God. They were like, sleep on your back. And I wasn't allowed to drink alcohol. I just had, and at the time, I was a single mom with 3 kids and I sold real estate for a living. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this for 8 weeks. My mom came and took care of the kids, which was very difficult for me to just sit there while she was taking care of my kids. Um, but it was hilarious because I would like go to sleep with this neck brace on, and then I would wake up like on my stomach, all twisted up, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And so there was a lot of fear there. I felt like as I recovered, I was like, is this going to happen again? Is my artery going to totally open up? Um, I was a big runner. I was like, can I run? Nobody would answer that question. Like, can I run?
Mhm.
So I just had to I felt like I was walking on eggshells. And then I did exactly what you said. Like, I was basically like, let me improve my odds the best I can. I could eat better, lower my stress levels. I was not good at that, by the way. That's why I do what I do today. Like I continuously learning how to keep my stress and anxiety levels down. But anyway, that fear part that haunted me for a couple of years. It kept me in a constant state of fear. And then it was a matter of um, just being like, I'd rather live my life. I'd rather almost be dead than live my life in fear. Like I'm not living
Right.
right now. I'm not living. So I wanted to set a good example for my children. So I like slowly worked myself out of that, started running, starting doing all the things they told me not to do and just living my life. I was just like, I'm just gonna do everything. So
Right.
I would assume that um was very hard for you. You had the cancer come back a couple of times. And so what was that like for you? How did you work your way through that?
Honestly, you know, it wasn't always easy. I think the first relapse was like, okay, we have options still, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
When the first immunotherapy failed, and then I was supposed to go on a clinical trial, and then the clinical trial got shut down. That's when it became scary for me.
Mm-hmm.
But also I was like, this doesn't feel like the end, right? Like it was a weird acceptance, but yet a piece of me was just like, this doesn't feel like I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And we had to write a letter of compassion to the FDA and the drug manufacturer for another immunotherapy that wasn't for my cancer, and just basically like a Hail Mary pass to the universe of like, if I'm supposed to be here, like, let's go. And if
Mm-hmm.
not, like I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the third time I was not prepared. I was still recovering from my stem cell transplant, and physically, emotionally, mentally was not in a space where I could have even uh thought that would be possible. I was still getting blood work every week, which is they caught it so early. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't feeling anything. But I just remember looking up at my husband, and I was like, at the time, I was like, I can't do this. I don't have it in me.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he was like, whatever you decide is what we're going to do. At this point, we're on year 4. So it's like, we're exhausted.
Yeah.
And, I cried, and I just was like, I can't do this. I literally thought about giving up. And the first thought that popped into my head was, your dad would be so disappointed in you. And I was like, of course that man pops into my head,
Yeah.
because everybody around me did everything in their power to help me get to this point. And here I was just going to give up. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I was like, why did he have to pop into my head? You know, like,
Yeah.
so I just thought to myself, and I said this to myself, I said, fine. We go, one more time, but that's it. We're done. I go, so you're either gonna kill me or you're gonna let me live, but I'm done. Like, I'm genuinely done.
Hmm.
And I was like, if you let me live, I will do everything that I can to change my life and not let this come back. I go, but we're done.
Yeah.
And it was like my way of saying to the universe, like, I don't know what you have in store for me, but like, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm here and I don't know why, or I mean, I think I know why is to help other women. And that's really been like my purpose and my mission since then. Um, because I do feel like the system has let us down, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're like, even in your stroke recovery, you're like, after PT, you're like, now what? They don't
Yeah.
teach you how to change your lifestyle.
Oh, they don't teach you anything. I
Right.
never once did they encourage me to do anything. Like it was
Right.
all, I mean, I had 8 weeks to sit still. So I did a lot of, reading.
Right. You had to, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you had to take ownership of your own journey. And
Hmm.
like, it's so hard because you're like being supported the entire time. And then all of a sudden to go, and now it's in your control.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck. And the
Yeah.
force be with you. Yeah. It is kind of, it's really bizarre. And I absolutely agree with you. I mean, the healthcare system is collapsing as we speak. So it's very disappointing. And I think the more people, I think it's actually empowering to know that you have to take a little bit, you have to take charge. You can't absolutely lean on the healthcare system to support you. So it's about creating um, the community around you and doing your own self education to see what you could do to improve your odds. And I would assume that after the last time that you got diagnosed, you probably were like, after you made that decision, like that decision is so powerful because I don't even know how to explain it because it was like when I decided instead of being a victim, I was just going to take charge, kind of like that was my decision. And it's like almost like when you make some kind of a decision like that in your life, it's almost like something shifts. It's like some kind of energy shift, right? And then you probably moved into action, like
Yeah.
what can I do? And so, what were some of the steps that you did for yourself in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, like you're so spot on with like something shifts and then it just like opens up a new path for you and you can see light and you're like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
I did. I educated, I researched, I went on a healing retreat I couldn't afford at the time. Because there weren't coaches out there for what I do. And so I was like, I was like, okay, so physically I have to rebuild strength. Okay, but now I'm in menopause. So now I have to
Hmm.
learn about menopause because
Ugh.
the only things that I knew were hot flashes and weight gain. So I was like, I'm 35. Like I have to manage my weight going forward. So now I have to learn about menopause on top of this.
Hmm.
Okay. So the learning curve was steep, but I first and foremost was like, how do I learn how to regulate my nervous system? Right. Because if I live in this constant state of fight or flight, like that's not going to help me ever.
Hmm.
So I learned how to meditate, right? I didn't even know what it was before cancer.
Hmm.
So I learned how to
Yeah.
meditate. I learned how to take efficacy back with my body through yoga and learn how to release the trauma that was stuck there,
Hmm.
and those were like the first steps because I was like, if I can't clear the noise, the loudest noise, I'm never going to be able to eat right and be able to consistently build back my confidence and love the body that I'm in instead of hating it. Cause I was like, how could I love this thing that basically like almost tried to kill me a lot,
Yeah. Hmm.
and shifting all of those conversations. And it was a lot of work. It felt like a full-time job just to get myself
Yes.
to a
Yeah.
better place.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that there's just like this common denominator that I've noticed in any type of disease where the person is um not taking care, like, I hate to put it that way, not taking care of themselves, because I don't want to put it on the person, because we're basically, even men are trained to just like do, and not really take care of yourself and really put the importance on, your relationships with others and with yourself. And then learning, like, why don't we learn how to regulate our nervous system when we're children? Why is this
Right.
why is this a thing when we're adults? Like, why don't we
Yeah.
learn how to do this? How come nobody ever taught me? Now whenever I see a parent teaching their kids like breath work or meditation or like
Mhm.
doing affirmations in the mirror, I'm like, yes. I'm like, like, it's basic um self-care, but it's not like, it's not just like the cushy kind of self-care. It's a
Mm-mm.
necessity self-care. This is part of just like eating well and getting the right amount of exercise. It's something that's so needed, so I feel like when you're working with people, you probably feel like you're teaching, well, you're teaching some of these people these things for the first time in their life. They've
Mhm.
never, and I wish that, I guess my dream is that we could change this so that when people are children, they can learn how to do these things so that they have a better chance of protecting themselves against different disease. And when you have like I say it like that, dis-ease, when you have dis-ease in your body, it affects everybody differently. Like, you got cancer, I had a stroke, some
Mhm.
people have a heart attack, some people
Mhm.
have um, maybe some type of mental disorder or something like that,
Right.
migraines. This is so many ways it
Yeah.
manifests into your body. And I feel like it's not the only reason why people have dis-ease, but it's a big contributing factor that kind of pushes you over the edge, and so I think it's just so important. And I feel like the work that you're doing is so amazing, and I could tell that your heart is like behind it
Mhm.
120%. Like, and so with that, I would like to say, how can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, please feel free to reach out on Instagram or Facebook. I'm at the happier hustle,
Okay.
and it's always going to be
Like that.
me. There's never a robot. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely say hello. I love connecting with others. I think it's like when you meet someone who's gone through what you've gone through, there's an unspoken bond. Like I know exactly what you're talking about when you're like, I had a stroke and I couldn't move for 8 weeks. Like, holy moly. Like
Yeah.
the recovery process of building back muscle and strength is just like
Hmm.
it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I was lucky because I was 39 at the time. So I was pretty young. I didn't lose a lot of my muscle mass as like somebody who might have been older. But yeah, it was, yeah, getting back into shape. I remember when I first started, because I was like, I'm gonna run. I don't care what anybody says. Like, nobody would like give me permission, They didn't want to be responsible because
Right.
they didn't really know what was gonna happen. And so I was like, okay. So I had a little bit of balance issues from the stroke. And so
Mm.
I started off just by walking down the street and saying, okay, I'm gonna walk until I reach that, telephone pole. And then I'm gonna stop for a second. And I'm gonna, so it was like more about balance at first. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna run until I get to that driveway. And then I'm gonna stop. And then I remember I ran my first, this is kind of a funny story. It wasn't funny at the time, but I ran my first 5K in December. I had my stroke in May. And so
Wow.
it was a big deal. And my daughter, so I had like this whole team of people that were going to run with me. And my oldest daughter was going to run with me, and I'm sitting there at the start line, and I'm like, oh my God, what if I drop dead? Like, I was like, what if I drop dead? That was going to be so traumatizing for my daughter. So the whole time I'm running, I'm like, okay, don't drop dead. Don't drop dead. Please don't drop dead. Because
Oh
I'm
my
like,
god.
it was the first time I was like running that far, and it worked out, obviously. And I've run like a marathon, probably like 15
Wow.
half marathons. I've run so much since then. And so, um, and just to like have like a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, one day, it was like 3 years. I would go like yearly to get it like looked at and checked out, right?
Hmm.
And so it was one day I was running. I felt great. I was just running around my neighborhood. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to run 5 miles instead of three. And I'm just chugging along, feeling great. And I come around the corner and I get like super dizzy. It felt just
Oh
like I
no.
did when I had my stroke. I almost fell flat on my face. And I was like, oh, something's going on, right? And so I started walking home. I called a friend and I was like, just stay on the phone with me till I get home. And then I called my neurologist. I went in and he did an angio to see what was going on. So it turns out that the artery that was clogged, blocked, that healed, blocked, was open again and healed. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's wild. The
I
body is a crazy thing, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And he had said to me, because I was like, am I going to be okay with just one artery to my brain? Am I going to like
Yeah.
have brain damage or something? He was like, the body finds a way. He said, so, and I
Yeah.
was like, well, what does that mean? Is it going to like the blood vessel going to like dig another hole somewhere? Like, what does that mean? He's like, I don't know. The body finds a way. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So,
Wow. That's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah. But I still like every day think about like any day that could happen again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Mhm.
at the same time, I'm not really afraid of it. I'm like okay with it. So I feel like um that's a good way to move forward. I don't know.
Well, you also know that I can get through it. Like if it
Hmm.
happens again, I did it once, I can do it again. And that gives you a sense of like, okay, yeah, is it gonna suck? But like I'm okay. I'll be okay in the long run.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We'll be okay in the long run. Well, Casey, you are genuinely a beautiful person, and I appreciate you being on here today and sharing your story. And I think when we share our stories, it just really helps other people that feel like they might be alone. And I would encourage all the listeners to reach out to Casey if you need her help and go find her on Instagram and Facebook and seek the support that you need while you're going through these hard times in your life. So thank you
Absolutely.
for
Thank you.
coming on.
Well, thank you.